Hey everyone, happy Thursday. And I want to share with you my friend Elaine Fluker, who I met a few years ago at a more of a mastermind workshop that our mutual friend Rachel was hosting. And everyone was sharing their ideas, and they were sharing about what they were currently doing and then what they would like to do. And Elaine shared something that night, and she just reminded me of this whole scenario that went down, and it was a tipping point for her career. So she had shared this whole theory about support is sexy and women supporting other women and how that is sexy. And she really wanted to make it cool. And I was like, wait, I think you're onto something. And she took it from there and ran. And here we are. How many hundreds of interviews later?
Over 250 interviews and 400 plus episodes.
That is a lot of content. And if you're not creating content, you might not understand how much content that is, but that is a lot of content. That's a lot of research. That's a lot of pre-production stuff, post-production stuff. So Elaine has a platform, a podcast called Support is Sexy, and she interviews some incredible women from all over the world. I had so much fun doing the interview with you on your show. You are a great, fun, energetic interviewer. And now she's on to the next extension of Support is Sexy, because she was doing so many interviews and entrenched in the podcast world. And support is the core of what she does. Her next venture is about helping other people break into that podcast world, get booked onto people's podcasts. And I think that's more of the core focus, but she can also help people start their own, become a host of their own. So we have a lot of content to talk about today. So thank you so much, Elaine, for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited. You know, I was super excited when you invited me. And just as you said, you are so much a part of my journey. You're the person that when I was working on the other business, and I think I said, can I mention this other thing to you? You're like, sure. And when I said it, which I have it recorded, everyone, so I have the history of it. I asked you about Yes, I have it recorded. It's fantastic. And I listened to it over and over again when I was thinking about making that pivot. And your response was just sort of, it epitomized the way other women too respond when I would say the phrase to them, well, you know, support is sexy. And they would go, oh yeah, okay, you're onto something. But for you, it was, of course, in the realm of you're onto something with the business. So it really was a pivot point for me. And I thought, okay, I'm going to double down on this. It wasn't a podcast then. So for anyone watching, you know, sometimes you don't know exactly what it's going to become, right? But
it was your movement.
It was a movement.
The movement you wanted to make. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
And wow, I mean, can you tell everyone where you were at that moment before this pivot happened so that people can see the evolution? Because I think so often people get stuck in this identity crisis of themselves, and they put themselves into a label or a box, and they don't realize you could just keep pivoting. It's you're building on from one thing to the next thing to the next thing.
Exactly. Yes, that's a great question, because that, I think you sort of released me from that whole being so attached to my other thing. You know, as they say, this is an awful phrase, but kill the baby. It's sort of like we get so attached and precious to the idea that we created before. And I put a lot of time, money, and energy into creating this. It was an online platform featuring videos for or about women of color, because during the time, this was around 2012, the content that was on television wasn't really supportive of that group. Now it's a lot more diverse. We have a lot of other movements and things that have happened in that short time. But I was creating that and really needed more money than I had to produce it at the level that I wanted to. And during that time, as a woman entrepreneur, struggling to build my business, feeling honestly alone, that's why I joined that mastermind led by Rachel at that time and met you. And then this idea had been going on, though, in my mind called saying support is sexy as a way of reminding myself to reach out for support. So I always say, I try to encourage women to remember to ask for and accept support. Because sometimes we even ask for it and we don't even accept it, right? I always say we have to get over I got it syndrome. Someone offers you something like simple. The other day, a guy in the elevator asked me if he could carry something for me, and I gave it to him like before he finished. Whereas before I would have been like, I got it. It's okay. I got it. You know, so
great.
Yeah. Got to get over. I got
the hardest thing for me personally. That was my biggest roadblock. That was my worst self-limited belief in my entrepreneur journey, because I was taught at a very young age that asking for help means you're weak.
Weak. And exactly.
And you're less than. And I didn't like that stigma. So I just always did that. I got it. I don't need anyone's help.
Yep.
And that was, a really hard thing for me to get past. I still have to do it. I mean, I still have to be very conscious of not doing that. I got it. Everything's under control, especially when it's not. And be okay with receiving help from people,
yes.
Just as I would give it. And my mentor told me something many years ago, as I was very vocal about trying to overcome this. And he said, how do you feel when other people help you? And I said, he said, how do you feel when you can help other people?
Right.
And I said, I love it. That's like my high. And he said, well, give someone else that same gift.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I think what you mentioned too is very important for people to catch. Where sometimes, I guess the language would be programmed to think that asking for support makes us weak, even if someone doesn't explicitly say you're weak if you ask for support. I know for me, it came from seeing my parents, who are insanely generous, always helping people in our family, but it was usually during a time of crisis. So I associated support with you help people. Those people are in crisis. They're needed. I mean, they were family and of course loved, but still in my brain, somehow my little twisted young mind, I thought, oh, to need support. Like you said, you're weak, you're vulnerable, you're in crisis. So I always wanted to prove that I was okay and prove that I got it. Right. So as women and as givers, a lot of us are very big givers too, who have the most trouble asking for support, just as you mentioned. So that was a big thing for me. And I had to sort of reprogram that. And that started for me going to this workshop called Momentum in 2015 and being around all of these other leaders and seeing that roadblock reflected in them. Right. So it was something I was having problems with. I didn't realize, but then seeing it in them, I was like, oh, yeah, I have a problem with support. So that's where it all started. And then as a woman entrepreneur, feeling alone, as I mentioned with that other business, it wasn't working the way I wanted to. And I really needed something to hold on to. And I latched onto that phrase, which became a movement. And after you mentioned that it could be something even more, I just sort of ran with it. And that's where we are now. I think you were episode like, I know. I think you were episode, I was going to look it up. I don't want to mess up anything. I think you were episode like 30 something of the podcast. And now I'm up to 418. So
great. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
I want to give a shout out to Christopher, who's listening to us, because he's been in the world. Even though we're talking about female-centric, Chris, this content is still relevant for men.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so can you just take people on the journey before we dive into the technical how to do things in the podcast world? I think everyone in here are entrepreneurs, and they're probably really curious too as to, okay, so Jen said that in that room and you latched onto it. So what did you do next? And how did you get from that room that night to the podcast launching? And to speak in the way that, entrepreneurs are like, okay, do this, and then I did this, and then I did that. Right.
That's a great question. I think the years sort of blend together, but I'll tell you some of the steps that I took after I really did decide to do that. One of the things and entrepreneurs seem to understand this too, the idea of doubling down on something once you decide to do it. So the reason I have, for example, 400 something episodes as opposed to just 50, I just started my podcast July 4th, 2016, is because I do a podcast 5 days a week as opposed to 1 day a week. So it's Monday. Yeah, it's Monday through Friday. I always say I'm channeling Oprah. I used to say chasing Oprah. I'm channeling Oprah. So some of the things that I did, for one, I started before I even thought about podcasting with posting consistent content on social media. So I got the Support is Sexy handle. I may have already had it at that time, but I started posting consistently content for women entrepreneurs, even if it was just an image of a woman entrepreneur I admired and a quote from her, just some way of getting started, right? You can't get better until you get started. So the thing is to get started, whether that's posting on social media, whether that's blogging. I always say start with social media because it's a low barrier for entry. It doesn't feel too heavy for people. But doing it, Can I ask you something real fast before we go any further? This is a psychology thing. When you got the Support is Sexy handle and you started creating the logos and maybe using Canva for some of the images that you were using, Canva. Yes, that's exactly. Canva.com. Yep.
Yeah. Were you feeling that, like, who am I to do this? Or were you like, I'm in, I'm ready to do this.
I've had that feeling. I actually felt more of, what is this? You know, I'm one of those people that one of the interviews I did is with this woman, Patricia Moreno. I
love Patricia.
I love Patricia. She's so great. For everyone listening, she created Intensati workouts. And I believe she was episode 26 or something like that. But one of the things that she said is to get comfortable living the question. And that is something that stuck with me because I always want to know the answer. You know, I'm doing this. What is this? Why is this? What is it going to become? But as entrepreneurs, we're solution oriented. So that makes sense, right? But we have to get comfortable in that space of living the question. So this was actually one time where I thought, okay, I'm going to create this. I don't know exactly what this is. And I started off doing the social media. So that was getting it on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter were my primary focuses. Posting content there consistently, and content, as I said, just social media posts. So people don't think, well, I have to wait till I get a blog. I have to wait for this and that. And then as time went on, I started just listening to podcasts just as recommendations from other entrepreneurs that I do, men and women. I asked them some of their favorites. And what I noticed at the time was in that space, there weren't a lot of women, and especially a lot of women of color, who were talking to entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, and then women entrepreneurs in certain different stages of their businesses. So I sort of started to see a little bit of the white space, if you will, and thought, well, maybe this could be something I create. And then it came to me, maybe I could use this to push the support is sexy message. So I was, without knowing, before I even interviewed Patricia, sort of living that question of how could I move this forward? And that's how that came to be. Just as an overall, we can talk about the more technical part of how to, but just that's really how it started. One of my favorite quotes, I always say this, Jen, is from Arthur Ashe: start where you are, use what you have, do what you can.
Yes, and absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just baby steps. And I know that starting a podcast or launching a business and getting on other people's podcasts could be really daunting. And the podcast world has shifted so much so quickly.
Right.
I just, really started to pay attention. I mean, 10 years ago, I was paying attention, but now I'm really paying attention because every time I go on to one of my friends or colleagues' podcasts, I wind up getting so much business conversion from those podcasts. Way more than some major national television shows.
That's right. That's what people say. That audience is much more engaged. Yep. Yeah.
And convert. They actually take action.
Right.
And they're the ones that are diehard, really listening and listening to it at 6 o'clock in the morning on their treadmill walk, right? And that's part of their habit and routine. And they really do take action. So going into the technical stuff, how did you even know where to begin? Like, what was the first thing you did? Did you research platforms and then you decide which platform suited you? And which platform was that for all the curious minds that want to know?
For podcasting?
Yeah.
The first thing I did was listening to other podcasters who talked about how to launch a podcast. So two of my favorites I'll mention to you, and I'm happy to share links with you and your audience. John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire. Yeah, John has a great series of podcast launch videos, they're actually called. And I think it's like 11 videos you can watch pretty easily. They're each just a few minutes long. And it literally takes you through the process of launching your podcast. Of course, the best way to learn is by doing. But to get you started, it tells you how to get it on Instagram, on iTunes, and how to set it up and things you need to do for tagging. So that's a great one. And then also Pat Flynn has a great series of videos too. And he hosts Smart Passive Income, which is actually the first podcast I ever subscribed to. So that is the first thing, doing this, the internet. I mean, it's Google University, right? Or YouTube University, they call it. Yeah. But doing the research and seeing who had information, which podcasters were successful in my eyes, and then who had information about how they did it. Was the first way. So that is what I literally used to start. And then I gave myself a launch date. That was very important. Instead of just, I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do this one day. And my launch date actually at first was September 2016, but then I had gotten about 5 interviews done. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Kevin, about it. No, I had 7 done. And out of 7 of the interviews, 5 of the women cried in a good way. I didn't say anything terrible. Yeah, they just were emotional about the questions and that. And I thought, wow, that's really something. And he said, you got to do it now. You got to put it, you're on to something. So July 4th, I moved it up. Very scary, but July 4th was the launch date. And I've been going ever since then, July 4th, 2016.
That's awesome. John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire. I'll say it again for everybody. Yes. That was one of the first podcasts that I saw significant conversion for, where I was like, maybe I should pay attention to this thing. Like, I felt like I was doing him a favor, like when it happened, because This was 5 years ago or 4 years ago. I mean, he was
so
just
very early on. Yeah. He's up to episode like 1900 now.
Yeah. Yeah. He was really just getting started, and I was early on for him as well. That's my claim.
Exactly.
So then you listen to those, and then what did you do? What platform did you wind up choosing?
I use Libsyn in order to syndicate my content. So libsyn.com. It's been around for years, one of the most popular, I would say, podcasting platforms. And what's great about Libsyn, in my experience, I haven't used any others, but I use them and very happy with it. What's great about it is it allows you to syndicate your content across multiple platforms. So in addition to iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, most of us have accounts there, but it also allows you to post your audio on YouTube, which is very important because YouTube is great for search. And when people are looking for, a lot of people have found my podcast through YouTube, even though I don't do video. Yeah, I have the audio play, and it's just an image of me, image of the person using it of me. So that's the thing. It allows you to post to all of those places simultaneously. So you're not even, I think you can do it to your blog as well. At the same time, but I do that part manually. So that's the reason I chose that platform, because it can go out to everyone at once.
So I just had a interview with Tracy, who you know, about her very technical angle. And she talked about Libsyn as well. And we were talking about all the different, taking one part of content and then always thinking about how many places can I place this content. So you had just said that you do YouTube immediately. So you take the audio, upload it, put an image there. And I listen to a ton of audio that I listen to through YouTube because I like the suggestion factor there.
Right.
So what are the other things that you do? Do you do small clips onto Instagram? Where else do you systematically place it?
Yeah, I also do posts on Instagram. I haven't started doing the audio post yet, but it's something I definitely want to do. So for everyone watching, just so you know, you can take a clip of audio from your podcast or any kind of audio that you have and have an image there on YouTube, and it'll play also. So I haven't done that yet, but I'm actually hiring a social media company that's going to do that for me. Yay! Because I'm trying to get support. That's my whole thing. Get support. But I do regularly post the image of the person on Instagram, as well as a link, of course. And I use Bitly links so I can easily track things. So to see how many people clicked on it, etc. I also post on Facebook and Twitter. Those are my primary areas. And the tools that I use for posting is Meet Edgar, because I just love that you can put some info, and it's founded by a woman. Yay, Laura. So I love that you can put your information in there, and it's not like some other platforms where you have to keep uploading things again and again. It regenerates your content over and over for you. So
that's Edgar, everybody, just in case you weren't sure.
Meetedgar.com. I actually have can I give an offer to your audience for Meet Edgar?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. If you go to, I just thought of it when you said that. If you go to Elaine Fluker, so my name.com/Meet Edgar, they're giving $30 off. I believe it's your first month. Yeah, awesome. So it's a great try. You can try. It might be the first month free and $30 off the second month. I can't remember right now, but please check it out. It's an affiliate link, no cost to you, but they have a great offer going on right now, and they're great partners.
That is fantastic. Before you give us, there was another thing you were about to give us, I think, but before you do that, I want to give everybody a hack from YouTube to getting it to Instagram. So because you uploaded an audio and then you just have a visual image, you can go to the YouTube editor. So when you go into the video editor, at the top of where the video plays, you'll see enhancements. You can click on enhancements and go down underneath where the video is, and it says trim. And then you can pick a 1 minute, you can shorten it right there and trim it down and have sound bites that you keep releasing through all of your social media. You could release the sound bites on LinkedIn. You can do it on Instagram. You could do it on literally every social media. But also what you can do if you don't want to do the trim video editor on YouTube, you can take the link of the YouTube show, and you can go to tube to gram, and then splice it there as well. And it'll give you, literally, it's meant for Instagram, so it gives you a 1 minute clip. You can pick whatever that clip is. You can slide the bar into any area that you want. Usually an area that's really rich in sound bites, and then upload it there. And then take that same clip, because it's now on the hard drive of your phone, and then upload it to all the other social media areas. And when you upload it from your hard drive, you do get higher views on social media. The only downfall of that is it takes away from the YouTube views. So it depends on what you're trying to really build. And that's really about strategy for you and your brand development. So anyway, I just wanted to jump in there real fast before we went further, so that people, if they're doing that now, that they could quickly just start to create little mini clips of all their stuff.
And what was that? It was called Tube to Gram. Gram.
I'm all about the hacks, Elaine. You know that.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I gotta tell you, I'm trying to write that down and pay attention still. That's great.
Tube Gram. Yeah. It's been one of my favorite finds over time. So you were saying, you use Meet Edgar, and then there was another platform I think you were going to mention.
Libsyn, Meet Edgar, and then I'm not sure what other. Well, Canva, we talked about already. Canva. Yeah. Oh, that is what I was going to say. So with podcasts, some people get, and you design it however you want, but get very caught up in what the image is going to look like. And of course you want it to look pretty and all that good stuff. But Canva is such a great tool for creating something simple. Again, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. So I looked at some other podcasters whose logos and things that I liked, and I just created my own design, if you will, in Canva. So for podcasting, I think the image has to be 1400 by 1400. So you want to make sure the size is right. But I just simply have Support is Sexy as a logo somewhere on the picture and the person's name. So come up with the way you want to brand it. Some people put a lot more on their images. It's really up to you. But Canva is a great tool, and I'm sure there's others, but which is also, I think, started by a woman in Australia, I believe.
Yes, yeah. And it's taken off like crazy because it's very intuitive.
Exactly.
It's just really fascinating. I'm doing this course right now called 30 Days to a Better Business Brand and Bank Account.
Oh, wow.
And every day I'm chunking down parts of business development, and I'm sharing all these resources with my group. And it is just mind-blowing to me how many resources that when I started my first business in 1995.
Right. Wasn't around, right?
We're so far from being there. And then just even in the last 3 years, it is really a very feasible thing for a small business owner with a shoestring budget to start something, keep building on it, and then have scalable platforms integrated into their business from the get-go, which those didn't exist before either. And it's just fascinating to me. Every day something is being added on and another service is being added on. And before we talk about your service that is being added on, I'm going to give a shout out to everyone here. Roxana's here, Humayun's here, and Chris just gave a shout out. Roxana said she likes the idea about taking the audio and making them in a video, and it's powerful. Repurposing content. So Elaine, you have recently started this Girl On podcast. Before we go further, can men use your service too?
Absolutely. Why not? I always say too, when I talk to clients, even though we focus on women podcasters or shows co-hosted by podcasts, I say, we'll never limit your genius. So absolutely. If there's other shows, exactly, or men who are interested, absolutely.
Yes. Great. Fantastic. So men, you can keep paying attention and use the link.
Stay in there.
So tell us what Girl On Podcast really is, and how people who want to build their business more rapidly and maximize some of the best. So some of the best podcasters out there. The Entrepreneur on Fires and the Lewis Howes, and the ones that convert in certain areas. And that's really important because there are a lot now. So to try and figure out where you're going to convert takes a lot of knowledge of the industry, which you have. So you're basically simplifying the process for people, matching them to the podcast that will give them the greatest conversion. Is that correct?
That's correct. And looking at the audience that makes the most sense for them too, depending on what their goals are. So that's one of the things that we talk about with Girl On Podcast, which actually started as a quote unquote support group, if you will, for women who wanted to be podcasters, because I would get so many questions about it. And then just this past holiday season, it sort of evolved as almost that idea when I was sitting across from you. Maybe you were in my head telling me, hey, this could be something. And I thought so many people ask me now about being on podcasts as a guest, and I connected so many people naturally. That's just what I do. And then that's when it took form as this idea of helping. Chris, we can help you too, but helping women especially get booked on podcasts, just because it's still a space that's primarily dominated by men, which I don't see as oppressive. I see it as an opportunity, right? Huge opportunity. And as you know, women are launching more businesses in the US than any other group. And we're just doing it, moving and shaking. So now is the time for women entrepreneurs to use these new platforms, or podcast isn't new, but it's definitely having a resurgence to our benefit. So yes, so we help you get booked on podcasts, and we talk to you about what makes the most sense for your brand at this time and smart ways for you to convert. So for you, you have all of this experience and different things that you've done, which of course people want to hear from you, but other people might be thinking, maybe someone's watching who's just starting out or who doesn't necessarily have the quote unquote name yet. But what we help you do also is create lead generators, as they are. Ooh. So if it's a guide or awesome. A freebie, a PDF, we'll talk to you about what makes the most sense for you and your business. And that gets people to your website, on your email list, and all the other important things that we need in order to convert them into a sale.
That is worth a lot. In case people don't realize how much that's worth a lot. I mean, I've been doing this for so long. I've been creating content for so long. But to me, that is a tedious part of content creation. And there is an element of strategy in that. And sometimes we're too close to our own stuff to pull out all these nuggets of value.
Someone said you can't read the label when you're inside the jar.
Hey, you are all about sound bites today. Everyone said how great that never limit your genius is. And now what was that one?
You can't read the label from inside the jar.
Exactly. You were like dropping soundbite bombs today.
All these podcast interviews in my head.
I love it. So that is amazing too. So you're not just getting them on the podcast, but you're making sure that they're positioned to convert once there. And that is so powerful, because I used to just go on anywhere, and radio shows, TV shows, and I never had a conversion strategy in place. Or I'd speak at events and I would never have a conversion strategy in place. And once I became aware of this strategy to have a strategy, I thought, man, I've lost so many leads and opportunities without just putting some thought to that in advance and utilizing it as an ongoing opportunity. So how, if someone is just more starting out and they don't have tons of things to give away, do you help them extract, creating a checklist or creating a,
exactly. That's exactly what we do. So how we'd start is, and I have different options for people. So say you are starting out, it might be the jumpstart, quote unquote, jumpstart one. But then we do help people get their basically extract content from them. So we have about an hour-long strategy call with you to not only talk about your business, but just sort of what we just said. And we read the label for you and say, what about this and what about that? So I've had conversations with clients where they're thinking, sort of like when I had the conversation with you, you're thinking one thing, but then someone can pick out, what about this? This could be very interesting. And then also I give the benefit of me being able to say, well, this is what I hear a lot of podcasters looking for their show, say around a specific topic. Like I have someone who specializes in sponsorships. And a lot of podcasters are looking for people to come on to actually talk about how businesses can make money, because we can all talk about how fun entrepreneurship is. But now people are like, okay, but how do I make money at this? So she has that expertise, because a lot of entrepreneurs, especially if you're a solopreneur, you may not be thinking about sponsorship as an opportunity for you. You may think you have to be a big company. So those kind of things we kind of hone in on. And then from that, if you don't already have a checklist, a PDF, a guide, anything like that, we help you create what that could be, or actually create it for you. So that's a service of it as well. That's
fantastic, because that's another area of expertise that you're blending into really a 360-degree business or brand strategy. And it's also about really positioning you with the right people at the right time. I know I just mentioned Lewis Howell, and he has a huge following and it converts, but you can imagine how many people are trying to get on there. So it's kind of like he, or even, Entrepreneur on Fire right now is like getting on the Today Show, right? So they're getting a ton of submissions, and you have the relationships already established, which is really important. So you're vouching for somebody who might not have enough strength or courage in their own pitch yet, because you really do have to create a pitch, just like you create a pitch to get on television nowadays, because it is a competitive space. So do you help them with the pitch, or do you pitch the pitch for them?
We create the pitch for you. So after that strategy call, we create a one sheet for you. That'll be your image and of course your bio, but then those talking points that I mentioned that we extract from you, we want to have those on there so people can easily see what your area of expertise is. So we design, and we have different templates, design a one sheet for you that you approve, of course. And then we use that to go out with to people with a well-crafted, of course, email about who you are. But this way they can see it easily. They can go to your website. We even do things like reviewing your website or any other consumer-facing materials to see if we need to tweak anything, because maybe we've changed the message or area of focus a little bit. So on your homepage, we might say, maybe you want to put this there so when they come, it's not completely like, well, she said she talks about this and this is about something totally different. So that's a part of it as well. And then you mentioned Lewis Howes, whose podcast I love, and John Lee Dumas. So those are all there are a lot of great big ones to be on. Tim Ferriss is another one. But also I want to encourage people to remember too, one of the things that I love doing is introducing you to some of those, if not smaller or just starting out, but still great shows. Those audiences are usually just as passionate, because the great thing about podcasting is it's basically being introduced to this group of people by someone that they trust. Right. Yes. So that's really where the magic is, as opposed to, I mean, the Today Show is great. You've been on there. I've been on there. But it's like someone's going to be on there. But this it doesn't necessarily feel like, you know, the hosts really love you and that's why you're there. Right. It's because you have something. Whereas podcasting, people are invested in a different way. So that's why I think a lot of the conversions and things happen.
And I think the conversations can get a lot more real and deep because you're not, you know, using 4 minutes of airtime that costs a fortune for advertisers. So it does allow truth and depth to really be a part of the conversation. And it is, I mean, the followers of these podcasts are tried and true fans, followers. That's why the conversion actually happens. Many people who I teach that are part of my different groups know I always talk about Russell Brunson. And
I was going to mention that, ClickFunnels.
Yeah, and ClickFunnels is huge. You use ClickFunnels. I noticed that today.
Yes.
Yeah. And your whole process in the ClickFunnels was so seamless. Everything was just seamless. And I was paying attention to it all because I saw ClickFunnels and I was like, that's right. I think Russell Brunson's a genius. And his book, Expert Secrets, gives a ton of advice to get you ready to be ready. So before you reach out to Elaine, go through that book and do a bunch of the exercises, because it's going to help you be ready for her so she doesn't need to do as much work. So you get ready to be ready, right?
Get ready to be ready. That's right.
So everybody is probably thinking, all right, I'm an entrepreneur and there's obviously budget, and I'm sure you built the model to address that. So I'd imagine all of your services are just put the platforms in a way that they're all affordable and digestible and in pieces, basically.
Absolutely. So the Jumpstart, for example, is $4.97 a month. And then we give you everything, including the strategy call, the review of your website, going over what your goals are, creating that one sheet for you. We also give you a gift to help you start on podcasting, because you want to have the right equipment. You don't need a lot, but I love for people to have a great mic. So I want all of my clients to have a great mic. So we gift you that as well.
What mic do you use?
I use the ATR 2100.
Okay.
Yep, ATR 2100. There's a lot of great mics out there, but that one is a really good one.
Okay.
So,
we were talking about that the last time I did a conversation about podcasts. And I'm always curious as to what mics people use. My one friend, Petra, was doing her podcast. She lives in New York City in a very busy area that's very loud, and she would do it in her closet.
Yeah.
But her microphone was like this amazing microphone that would drown out all the
those noise canceling microphones. Yeah, a lot of New Yorkers. It's funny. I think Jenny Blake of the Pivot podcast says she does hers in her walk-in closet too. It's like, we got to start where you are, use what you have, do what you can.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So the $4.95, does that guarantee, or at least commit to a certain amount of pitches per month? Placement.
Endlessly, but we try to say you'll have at least 2 podcasts a month, because it takes time, of course, to build it up. And then there's other plans that go higher and you get some of the additional things that we talked about. But yeah, so that's what I like to say. And, you know, usually it's more. I've had people just say, oh, that was so fast with getting, but I feel like once your materials are together and we get your talking points down and we reach out to people who aren't just the bigger podcasts, but who do have great shows and great audiences that fit your target. So depending on your area of expertise, of course, we cater it to the show. And also one of the great things that people have liked about it is however much it is that month, depending on what plan you choose, you don't have to commit to a long-term contract. So this is a subscription thing. What I like to tell people, though, as with any marketing strategy, as you know, you want to commit 6 months would be great so you can see how well it's working or not. But you don't have to stay for a certain amount of time. So see if it's working and how you feel about it. And then you can always make adjustments.
Yeah, I feel like 3 to 6 months is the sweet spot to start to feel momentum in any marketing or PR strategy. And I want to give perspective to that cost, by the way. If you get if your products are a coaching business, or if you have a workshop that you're trying to sell, or you have hard good products, that one cost could be one person converting into one sale. And now but beyond that one sale, now you've already made your money back, but you now have third party credibility and you keep building your audience too. So it's like the perfect level investment, in my opinion. That's a low risk. It takes only probably one conversion for most people that I know that are part of this, actually even less than one conversion. For some people, it's like a quarter of a conversion. And so I'd imagine you also help people work with their product value too, so that those conversions are converting in a good investment way. And then, the followings, if they have 10,000 followers, there's a good chance that you're going to get a few hundred from them as well, if everyone really likes your content. And that's what I see. That's where a lot of growth comes from. My base is doing other people's podcasts. So.
And the value of that, too, to piggyback on what you said, is also that, with podcasts, they live for the most part forever. So unlike the appearance on television and those things, which are great, as we mentioned, you also will have the benefit of being on that person's website. And then the host shares it everywhere. And then those people share it. And then, of course, as you mentioned, social media. So it tends to have a longer tail, as it were. Being on podcasts. And the author, Dory Clark, who wrote Entrepreneurial You, I love her book. She was on my podcast, and she mentioned that for her book launch, for example, I think she did 130 or some seemingly insane number, but she just mentioned that she had done that before with her first book, and it converted so well with book sales just being on podcasts. The bigger ones and other ones. So it really is a strategy that more and more people at all levels are using, as opposed to, or in addition to, we work with people too, clients who have their own publicists, and we work in tandem with their publicists, or some do one or the other. So, and publicists cost different amounts. So you can also compare that as well. The amount of investment here is usually a lot less compared to most publicists.
Absolutely. And what I found in the PR world, which I've been a part of for a very long time, not as a publicist, but paying publicists.
Right.
Each one of them has a strength, and the strength might be in magazines, the strength might be in television, the strength might be in radio. And usually they have that strength, and they might have some trickling into other arenas. But what I think would be smart is to find somebody like you and two other people for the publicist, and kind of have this team, this dream team of people all working together. In focused areas, because I feel that that's where a lot of publicists go wrong. They overpromise, and they're overstretched in those promises and don't have enough of the relationships in all the different verticals. And usually they fall short because they're hitting one vertical and not the other. So, but I have my book launch coming up. So
I come back on.
Well, yeah, I definitely want to come back on, but I actually might want you to be doing my podcast vertical of my book tour.
Absolutely.
My friend Jess Toddfeld set literally a Guinness Book of World Records record about being on a certain amount of talk shows in a very short period of time. So I think I want to compete against him.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Guinness Book of World Records, which can't be as challenging as the radio, because radio has existed for a lot longer, but I at least want to set the bar. So maybe we'll do that.
Let's do it. I'm your teammate. Let's do it. That's amazing. And the great thing I will say about podcasts, I don't know if he had to go into the studio for radio interviews or he did them over the phone, but you can do them from anywhere, you know, and that's the thing a lot of people love about it too, because of time. They don't have to get done up for video unless it is a podcast with video, but most of them are audio. So that's the thing too. We can block out a day where you do, 15, I don't know, however many you can do in a day or however many. And
I'll sprint all day long.
Right. It's for a certain amount of time. Exactly. That's what I do. It's like, go hard during that time. And then, so that's how you do it. And then it's out there forever. It lives on forever.
All right. So I'm going to challenge you.
Okay.
To see if you can figure out, and I'll look in my way of research. You might have more access to this. See if there is a record, and let's try and set the record and break it together.
For podcast interviews?
Yeah, and during a certain period of time.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to sprint a marathon.
Exactly. We'll do it. I'm definitely down. I'm sure it's out there. I feel like Dory, I don't know if people did more than Dory. Dory has done like 100 something, but we're going to find out.
Whatever Dory has done, I'm doing more. And
Good.
and so we've just committed in front of an audience too. Yes. So now we're like really accountable of doing this.
We're in, and we're women who stick to our commitments. So absolutely.
Yeah. So stay tuned. You're going to see this momentum happen not too far from now in April. So we will keep you posted. We should record that too. We'll do some video of it so people can see us when we're exhausted.
Right. It will show the process. Exactly. Yeah, show the process.
Yes. So anyway, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I want to ask you one last question.
Okay.
Other than the obvious, what are your 3 favorite podcasts aside of Support is Sexy?
Aside from Support is Sexy, I love the So Money podcast by Farnoosh Torabi. I just had her on my show recently. Yeah. Farnoosh is great. I love Amy Porterfield's podcast. Not Beyond the I'm drawing a blank on what it's called. Online Marketing Made Easy podcast.
Her content's great. I love her content.
Absolutely. And then I also love I'm trying to think of some I haven't mentioned. Beyond the Business Suit with Kylie Carr is another great podcast. Yep.
So business is your focus apparently in your podcast listening. Got it.
Mm-hmm. And most people I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people I know tend to have certain areas, business and personal development tend to be because I love the Super Soul Sunday podcast. I love other ones like that, Tony Robbins. Yeah. But that combination has been a lot of, and Making Obama and Making Oprah, great storytelling. I love narrative podcasts right now. I'm looking forward to doing some of that as I move on through the year. So that's really good too. And I have a gift for your audience before we go.
Oh, okay, cool. Excellent.
Go ahead. What were you going to say? Maybe you'll.
Oh, I said, maybe I'll commit to also starting my own podcast called Getting Your Groove On.
There you go. Let's do it. I can definitely help you do that. You'd be great. Yeah. And the thing is, as you mentioned, repurposing content, like you could be recording this interview and use that for a podcast as well. So you're not doing anything extra. You're just repurposing your content.
Exactly. I mean, I have a ton of these already. So
yeah, there you go. You have a ton of episodes. That's what people need real quick. I know we have to go. Think about too, though, the fact that you're probably already producing content that you can use, even if it's not audio. Maybe it's reading your blogs or some of your longer posts. A podcast episode, that's another great thing. Doesn't have to be an hour or so long. It can be, I've done episodes 3 minutes and, it's about the content. So that's something to think about too.
Absolutely. I like micro content because I'm so ADD.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Even if I listen to a whole show in micro content, I feel like I'm digesting it a little bit better. But so everyone loves a gift. So
yes.
What's your gift?
Yes, so I have a gift on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest. And it has 10 insightful tips, some things you might not have thought of how to be a great podcast guest if that's not something you've done before, or if you've done it before and you just need a refresher. So you can get that at girlonpodcastgift.com.
Oh, I love it.
Girlonpodcastgift.com.
And I'm going to put the link to sign up with you to get, I think you do like a consultation. Is that how it starts?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So you do this consultation, and that's how it all begins. And I will share the link in the comment section at the end of this. So any of you who want to reach out to Elaine and start getting booked on podcasts and converting, and create new products probably during that process with Elaine.
Yeah.
If you're stuck, like, what am I going to sell?
Mm-hmm.
Elaine's going to be able to help you with that. So any questions, please reach out to her. She's very open and very approachable, as you can see, and a wealth of knowledge and guidance and support.
Support is sexy. Thank you so much, Jen. You're fantastic. You know, I just admire you and everything that you're about. And you've always been so supportive of women and entrepreneurs and everyone. So I just love everything that you do. I'm here for you and I can't wait to sprint with you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to start making a plan like next week.
Exactly. Great. There you go.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.